Welcome, everyone. Hello, welcome. I'm Monica Phillips, the Director of Learning Content and DEI at ChIPs, and I'm so thrilled for this session, ChIPs Male Allies. It is something we started 2 years ago, and it's been an audience favorite across our community. This one is Leadership and Allyship, how impactful leaders make space for inclusion. And here today to lead this conversation is Maren Kehoe. She's General Counsel of Boot Camp Cohort 4 member, and she's also the Assistant General Counsel Commercial at Paycor. Welcome, Maren.
Thank you so much, Monica, and good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Today, we're focusing on leadership, allyship, and how inclusive practices, particularly supporting women in the workplace, drive workplace success. It is clear that when women thrive, entire organizations thrive. Through stronger performance, smarter decisions, and a healthier culture, inclusion in organizations becomes a strategic advance. Before we get started, I'm honored to introduce our panelists in no particular order. We have Zach Ferren, owner of the Lion Group, an in-house legal recruiting firm. When Zach is not building high-performing legal teams, he spends his time chasing an energetic 18-month-old and preparing for baby number 2. Congratulations, Zach and family. We also have Jason Garcia, Office Managing Partner at Reed Smith in Palo Alto, focusing on retention, client service, and building diverse partnership pipelines in technology and IP law. Jason is not only a legal expert, but also a certified dive master scuba diver. I hope I said that correctly, and is the first lawyer in his family. We are also joined by Albert Harnois, Assistant General Counsel at Marvell Technology. Albert brings hands-on experience aligning legal systems and values to support performance and engagement. One fun fact about Albert, which might be the most fun fact of all the day, is that he danced for the Golden State Warriors for 7 years and is now involved in a hip hop organization called Culture Shock, dancing with the likes of some of the choreographers for Dancing with the Stars, etc. Finally, Andrew Ting is an adjunct professor at Georgetown University and George Washington University, teaching future legal leaders about law, technology, and inclusion. Andrew loves running and role-playing games, with Expedition 33 being his latest adventure. A big welcome to our special panelists and allies in our community, and thank you for joining us. As leaders in the legal profession, we know that representation and leadership matters. Inclusive leadership, though, is all about creating systems and cultures where everyone can contribute fully. Research and experience shows that when women and underrepresented groups thrive, organizations see stronger performance, higher retention, and more innovation. Inclusion isn't just a metric, it's a driver of better business and outcomes for an organization. Allyship also plays a critical role. Positive intent is no longer enough. True allyship shifts to active leadership when we remove barriers, challenge assumptions, and weave equity into daily decisions and systems. Allies, such as the 4 joining us today, model inclusive behavior and signal to others that diverse perspectives are valued. We are going to start with some questions to our panelists, and I'm going to start with Albert. Albert, women in law still encounter ceilings in advancement. What does inclusive leadership look like to break through those barriers? And can you share examples where inclusive practices have significantly improved team performance or outcomes?
Well, in terms of the latter part, inclusiveness, improving outcomes, we've have as part of our litigation and prosecution teams, women who have taken leading roles. And I'll tell you, in the process of trying to recruit women law firms and women to staff our teams, I have encountered resistance, and I've encountered stereotypes, women being stereotyped. And one in particular was when one of our litigators was described as being overly aggressive. And immediately, first of all, it took me aback to hear what was a textbook example of stereotyping, I felt. And so I countered it immediately with a totally different narrative. And, and I frankly said, and one of the things I said in the preamble of my counter narrative was, funny, that's not how I see it. And that as I see it, she's aggressive in putting forth our arguments, and she's passionate about getting us the best solution, getting us the best results. But what I had to do is I had to back that up by really understanding all the arguments that we're going to make. And I had to write it down so that whenever I encountered it, that I would have it readily available. So not just the arguments, but the arguments and the facts. So as a practice pointer, I find this helpful whenever I am confronted with stereotypes, not only stereotypes of women, but stereotypes of different races, people from different regions, or people with different sexual orientation, that I have readily to my disposal the reason why this person is the best person for the position. Inevitably, what happened was that we did get the best result because we had an innovative argument, a creative argument that ended up making law. So and the solution was great for us. But again, this is something that I've learned through the years that I need to do. So I keep track of the strengths that these women bring to our teams. And, it's not just isolated instances, is you want to build a whole framework and infrastructure for reaching out and nurturing, developing, and retaining that talent. Now, the front part of your question, that was the second part. The first part
was what does inclusive leadership look like to break through those barriers? And I can kind of follow up with the question based on your initial response. The second part, what sort of resistance did you face in the organization when you used facts and research to support or kind of break down some of those biases? Did you experience resistance from some of your peers or other leaders in the organization that weren't yet ready to take that step to break those barriers down?
Well, so it had to do without getting too detailed. It had to do with others, both inside and outside, but mostly outside. When we have a lot of different outside counsels, and a lot of them come from blue chip law firms, quote unquote. And yes, I've encountered, first of all, a lot of those firms are lacking in the number of women in top level management. And so I've had to be insistent about our outside counsel, female outside counsels, having a seat at the table, and sometimes literally a seat at the table, being right there in the courtroom, having a front seat and not a back supportive seat, and just being insistent on that, and to combat the inherent biases is, if you keep repeating it enough, I found if you keep repeating enough and you keep singing the praises of that person. Now, when I say singing the praises, I'm not talking about embellishing. I'm talking about substantive strengths that these women have. I mean, this is the reason why we've engaged these women to be part of the team because they brought us something unique. And that is, by the way, another practice pointer I have for those women out there who are trying to either start their legal practice or try to get ahead in a company is to network and tell what is unique about you, because everyone has some unique strengths. What are those unique strengths? I am often surprised by how good people are, uh, women are, and what strengths they have in certain areas, which is why I'm interested in adding them to our team. Yet don't say much about it, and so that's why it's really incumbent on me uh, to to do that, and to do that consistently, and to always have some type of script. I even have to, once I have the script, I have to refer to it periodically, and it's just something I realize I have to do.
Great. Following on that, Zach, I have a question for you. And we know that you help build in-house legal teams, in supporting allyship and inclusiveness. And allyship in the workplace supports thriving organizations. That's clear. But what strategies do you see as effective for leaders as you're placing them or talking to companies wanting to fill a seat to foster true allyship? And then in that work, how can women identify allies in an organization and, to Albert's point, share their strengths, share what is unique to them and that makes them stand apart as a leader in an organization, as someone that's trusted and advocated for, so that they can find allies who then advocate on their behalf when they're not in the room? Kind of do as Albert did, speak to their strengths when they're not there, and build them up in an organization.
Yeah. So I'll start with the second part on IDing those individuals. I think that can be tough, right? Like I think it works with, like, you got to network with people, so not just in your organization but externally, because you never know until you get to know someone. Are they going to advocate for you? Like there's plenty of leaders out there that do advocate for their team. One kind of example that I've got, and I see this play out over and over, is when I'm doing a search and I'm calling GCs about a GC role. The number of times I have a leader go, "Hey, I'm not interested, but you should talk to my number two," or someone on my team about this role. Like that's going from allyship as intent to, like, that's an action where they're making direct email intros. They're going to bat for their team and saying, "Hey, this person's fantastic. You need to chat with them." And so I see that a lot. As far as IDing, like I think you have to speak to people. You got to get to know them. And I don't know if I have a great answer for saying, "Hey, this is exactly the behaviors you want to see." You'll as you get to know them and build that relationship, you'll begin to see. But sometimes it can be a tough one to navigate. Now on the system piece and what I see leaders doing to build those systems. I actually posted about this this week because I'm thinking about it for my team. How do I advocate for them? How do I help them develop? Is one-on-ones, like regular check-ins, checking on teams, like how they're doing personally and professionally, looking at ways that they can grow in the new year. And so if your leader's not coming to you and saying, "Hey, how can we help you grow?" Maybe how we can expand your practice area. Like maybe you're kind of siloed to, you do M&A and securities experience, but you really want to grow into a corporate generalist and become a general counsel one day. If your leader's not asking you questions on that piece and helping you expand, that's potentially a yellow flag and maybe something to ask for, of saying, like, "Hey, can we talk more about this?" And are they giving you opportunities to do stretch projects and interact with other parts of the business that maybe typically you don't touch? And so I see that quite a bit. So I think one-on-ones, and then also, like, if you are a leader, doing skip level meetings. So a lot of times organizations will have different layers. Some legal departments are super lean. Some have an AmWal 100 firm in their company. Like Apple, I was looking the other day, has a massive legal department. And so are the leaders in that organization, kind of skipping a level and checking on the team below, and making sure that people are being taken care of. Those are kind of a few practical things I've seen.
That's great. Jason and Andrew, anything to add before we jump to our next topic on those?
Sure. I think these are great examples of allyship as career advancement. Allyship as community also helps too. Like I remember I was the leader of the Asian American Employee Resource Group, and oftentimes minorities of women, or especially minority women, feel kind of alienated, right? So when the whole Stop Asian Hate movement was going on, made sure that at my company, folks had a safe space to talk and be allies together.
Yeah, with respect to the community, building community, what's really helpful is to have have events, events around that support allyship, that support women, that support the promotion of women. So it's about having an infrastructure, and also not just events, but where it's repeated in as part of your core values. And so all of that helps to create community and bringing people together, bringing together allies, mentors, having mentorship, both male, female, male, woman, mentorship. And I would add intersectional mentorship. So you would have LGBTQ plus and women and different ethnicities and interest groups, and so that you get everyone networking, and where you're a big community. I'm in high tech, and I'm in semiconductors, and especially semiconductors. There's a real need for all talent, because that's what's going to make you competitive, and to really understand and fully appreciate the value of having the largest talent pool to draw from and the best talent pool. So and then recruiting that talent pool, nurturing that talent pool, and retaining that talent pool.
Robert, we had just a quick little at Paycor that was acquired last year. In previous years, we had what's called the Women's Network, which is a group of women leaders in the Paycor organization, and it's sponsored by our CEO and the male leaders in our organization. We created what was called the Win Retreat, which was a 2-day pause and retreat for women leaders in the organization. We would have speakers come in. It would be women leaders getting together in community to acknowledge each other's strengths and opportunities for growth. It became a really impactful couple of days, and things that the entire organization, they would apply, and there would be limited spaces, but looked forward to kind of pausing, acknowledging the strength of women and the opportunities that we have to better the organization. So that's something that I've been a part of as part of kind of a community in our organization.
And that really helps when it comes from the top, by the way, to have that come straight from the top. And one thing, I'm going to visit a little plug, but for my company is very good at coming right straight from our CEO on down.
That's amazing. And it's kind of critical for it to be successful in the organization. Well, trust isn't just a nice to have. It's a performance multiplier. It improves collaboration, retention, team cohesion. It gives people permission to share ideas that can meaningfully change the outcome and the trajectory of the organization. And then when you couple trust with a growth mindset, you don't focus on fixed abilities, but rather on learning and potential of individual contributors and teams. Question for you, Andrew. When leaders build environments that combine trust with growth mindset, diverse voices shape strategies and organizations are able to make better decisions. How have you built trust and the psychological safety to unlock potentials of those on your teams or around you? And what does this tell us about trust's role in collaboration and retention in an organization?
Absolutely. So as I was just saying in the chat, right, Monica asked such an important question about how do you advance talented team members who are more under the radar, right? And I think communication is really important, not just to my direct reports. I used to be the chief legal officer or general counsel of various different companies, but also skip levels, as other folks were saying on the panel. So you can get to know each person, right? Build an individual relationship with them. So when they have good ideas, they feel comfortable speaking up. Some of the best ideas in my organization come from the folks who are actually on the front lines dealing with clients, right? Who are traveling, et cetera. I don't need to hear from like other managers who are just behind screens all day. I want to hear from people who are in the field. And so just building that trust, that psychological safety, really going around the whole room, like every screen on Zoom and saying, Monica, Marin, Jason, Albert, Zach, everybody, what do you think, right? And really absorbing that feedback, following up on the feedback really builds a lot of psychological safety.
So we're still on mute. Have you seen, I'm going to kind of follow this up with my follow-up to Albert earlier. Have you seen resistance with your peers and leadership in creating that psychological safety and really giving everyone a voice to kind of give their input and expertise?
I've been fortunate to work in teams or hire for people who are my team where they love it, right? I mean, they just want everybody to be heard. I have come into past organizations where people roll their eyes and say, hey, this junior person, why are you giving them talking time in the room? Like, because I care, damn it. It's an end of conversation. My team, my input, my results, right? Get the best of everybody on the team.
I love that response. That's great.
By the way, I experienced that sort of thing where a junior woman was part of a development team, and that junior woman came up with a very creative solution to a technical problem, which was a breakthrough for us. So it ended up with a very good result,
And
all because the leader enable that person to talk and encourage that person to speak up. When the person didn't speak up, called on that person. What do you think?
if I could comment on something, I worked in-house for a company, SAIC, which had a very horizontal sort of structure in terms of management and in terms of running different projects. It was a lot of project management for various things, and you had a team that was made up of everyone from, you know, a paralegal to an associate to or an attorney to counsel to somebody in the C-suite as part of the team. And I found it really useful because they structured it and so that the project could be led by a paralegal from whatever level. And so it flattened that sort of reporting. And so on one project, I might be leading it. On the next project, it might be somebody that's technically, you know, at a lower level than I am. And they were the ones that were leading the project. And so I'm answering to them. And I found that it really brought out people. It brought out trust. It brought out communication. It gave you insight to what other people are doing on a various role. It brought out respect. And it's something that, you know, transitioning into, you know, into Reed Smith, into a law firm, I've worked with, you know, within my group to really give people that opportunity, to put them in that uncomfortable position of, now you're going to lead this. I'm going to listen to you. Let's see what you can do. It gives you a chance to identify talent, to put them in their best position to grow, and it allows you to learn things and to constantly grow. So, you know, again, it's a very, you know, creating that environment, creating that trust, creating that community where everybody's working together. I mean, I feel like I'm reporting to everybody I work with all the time. They're all the bosses. I'm just here along for the ride.
And have you experienced a situation, Jason, when you are trying to use growth mindset to reduce bias and talent evaluation and really giving people, putting them in the lead, right? Have you experienced where people are a little standoffish and you really have to go in and pull it out of them? And say, I really need to put you in this stretch position. I see this as the best place for you to be and grow right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think we faced it a lot when we're going up against, when we're pitching for different work. I try to, our team, we try to bring in people at different levels, put them in a role where they're learning. As OMP, I'm interviewing people for joining the firm, and I'll ask them a question. Oh, how many, RFPs have you submitted, and were you, pitching for a client? Were you involved in? And I'll get, from partner level candidates to look at me and go, well, I know that was always done by somebody higher than me, or by the group lead or whatever. And I think really kind of, again, that horizontal approach of driving that down, it gets buy-in from everybody at every level. The pushback has been sometimes when I'm dealing with somebody else that is providing the opportunity, they go, are you sure that person's the right level? And I go to vouch, or we go to bat for them. It's also something where you kind of get out of your own way. I mean, I think we all have somewhat of an ego, and it's really kind of getting around it, and taking pleasure in putting somebody else in a position where they're able to succeed and do something. It doesn't have to be about me.
Jason, you brought up a great point that I wanted to follow up on in this. Anyone can answer should they feel inclined. How can we talk about team members or associates kind of create if the organization doesn't have a top-down mindset of inclusion, trust, and growth? How can people navigate that, right? When it doesn't, it sounds like Jason, Albert, Zach, Andrew, all of you come from organizations, at least currently, that have that kind of top-down mentality. When you aren't a leader, how can you start to break through some of those barriers that just inherently exist in an organization?
I mean, I'll jump in. I'll say, in terms of, I'm blessed to be at where I'm working at Reed Smith. We have a managing partner that is female. She's wonderful. The firm has done a lot of work, and it's been a very focused, development of the culture and for inclusion. Um, I've been at other places, and I would say even within this structure, it's hard sometimes. And the same way that you manage up when you're dealing with different work things, you're managing up and you're managing down. And so it's putting yourself in that position. And as your role changes, it's also have to be aware that, in some respect, I found it easier to manage up when I was an associate or counsel, because well, heck, I was just an associate counsel, so nothing mattered what I said. I could express myself, and I had leadership that was willing to listen to me. And more often than not, I would provide something that was useful. As you move up, it's again, you're still doing that, but sometimes it feels like you're heard less. But to me, I think you have to be the consistent voice. It'll bring out others that will reach out to you, I think, to ally yourself with. And that's the only way that you can see, amongst the darkness, where the other light is.
Yeah,
I would
go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, thinking back when I was a junior associate, right? I would just reach out to people and just say, "Hey, do you want to grab coffee? Do you want to chat?" Right? Maybe they worked in my department, maybe they were lateral, etc. But if you don't raise your hand, nobody's going to notice you, right? And even now that I'm more senior, I really love it when women, minorities, whoever, more junior folks kind of reach out, say, "Hey, do you want to grab like a coffee or a virtual meeting or something like that?" And sure, I'm busy. It could take like a week or two to get on the schedule, but it's great just to be able to connect to people in an organization, get a different perspective, see if you can help them or at least share perspective, right? But if you don't have that outreach and send that email. What's the worst thing that could happen? They ignore you. I mean, it's fine. Go for it.
Yeah, I think within an organization, when you're encountered this, you have to ally with other people. I mean, because it's very difficult to try to do it on your own. You have to ally with other people just to see that, hey, it's not just me that says that this woman is right for this position, but here we have other perspectives too that say that this is the right person for the position. Now, with this, where I have where I run into this is when I deal with uh, partners or law firms outside of my own organization, and then I have to pull the client card, simply saying, "Hey, I'm the client. This is what I want. This is why I want it."
That's great.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I would say call your friendly neighborhood recruiter and find a different organization. But all kidding aside, I do think within organizations, it's all relationship, inside, outside, and even this last year, network. And I know that's a talking point. So hopefully, I'm not getting ahead of myself. But the network equaling net worth, like one of the biggest trends that we saw in 2025 was how legal execs in our network were landing new roles, and it was through relationships and personal relationships, people they worked with in the past. So even at your current organization, if it's not the spot where they're really advocating for you, still build relationships, because that can still benefit you in your career 5, 10, 15 years down the road, and they may be able to help you break those. So exactly what Andrew was saying, grab coffee, grab lunch with people, ask them questions about their career, ask them how you can help them, add value and build that relationship, because that's going to carry more weight than your title or what you could do for the organization, not only in that organization, but down the road as well. So
About networking and building relationships, my practice pointer is, since I'm the client, is for those who are building their practice, is getting to the consciousness of the client. In other words, take advantage of opportunities, touch points, because the more that you could interact with that person over time, the more you're into their consciousness. If you're not even into your consciousness, then you're probably not going to be considered at all. And so what's funny is I just had this happen. A Canadian patent agent of mine contacted me because she knew that I was going to be on this panel. Right. So she contacted me and said, "Hey, I saw you're going to be on this panel. I'm excited to see you on this panel." And it just so happened the very next day, I had a situation, and and because of that contact, she was right at the forefront of my consciousness, and she got a case from me because she was in my consciousness, and I saw that this case, this patent prosecution case, should go into Canada. And so she got that case. And by the way, she also emailed me some other tidbits for this talk, which I fully appreciate.
That's great. I also love the comment from Zach that if you're not in an organization that supports you or inclusivity and growth, that's not the only organization for you. There are organizations out there, and you're not, stuck in one, if you will. For inclusion, somebody touched on this earlier. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but for inclusion to be truly successful, impactful, and sustainable, it requires structural changes, real changes in the organization, not just individual effort. Sustainability requires processes that benefit everyone, hiring practices, fair evaluation practices, clear promotion paths, fair compensation, when all of these things are fundamental to an organization's system and values and not just dependent upon one leader or a few leaders, we're going to see stronger performance, higher engagement, in a place where the entire teams can thrive. Andrew, question for you. As a leader, how have you championed for equitable compensation in your team? Have you noticed kind of discrepancies, and how did you approach ensuring that women and underrepresented professionals receive fair market value? And what insights did you gain about whether current systems support or fight those biases?
I'm so glad you asked that. It makes a big difference, right? It's not just words, it's action, it's a paycheck. Women still, on average, are kind of underpaid compared to comparable men, right? There has been progress made. It's uneven, but it's still true. And a lot of times, like in various companies I've worked at, HR is like, well, pay them just 10% more than they just make now for their promotion or what they make their prior job. You're good. They'll take the job. It's a 10% increase or whatever percent increase. I don't think that's right, right? So like when I have a woman or anybody, honestly, that deserves a promotion, I don't just look at their current base and give them a nominal raise. I look at the market, right? And I think like, what's fair pay for that work, right? Plus also everything they know about the company and all of their relationships, all their value, all that. What's the replacement value? If I had to go find somebody and get them up to speed, you probably can't find somebody to get up to speed for a few months, right? It's usually a number that's a lot higher than just a nominal raise, right? After off a lower base, probably, if they're already a woman and historically underpaid. So you go to bat, right? And I was like the interim chief financial officer for a while at my prior company. Budgets are budgets, et cetera, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? And you just have to say, make room for it because it's important. If you're not taking care of your people, the people are the most important thing, right? So, and it's great for morale and motivation, right? When you know that your boss has your back, is being, getting into heated conversations because they care for you. I remember that there was one woman minority on my team, and she just looked at me after a one-on-one and said, Andrew, I've never had this. I've never been so supported before. And I was actually really surprised. And I just said, I'm just doing my job. That's what a manager should do for a man, a woman, minority, whatever, right? That's just a job. Equal work for equal pay. I'm sorry that we have to talk about it. It should be obvious.
Absolutely. Andrew, how fortunate people must be to be on your team when you say that to them. Zach, question for you. In the counseling, if you will, not a legal way of women in the legal field and in-house legal positions, how do you encourage women candidates to really advocate for themselves, whether it's for an internal position promotion or in job negotiations, if they're uncomfortable asking for more? How do you really encourage that and support them in that?
Yeah. So a lot of our approach, and we call them career calls, is kind of our internal language where we have 30-minute calls with people, just understanding their career, what they're looking for, motivations, and even compensation is one piece that's very, very important, in my opinion, and making sure that people are paid market. And so we share a lot of data. Like I can think of an individual in the DC Metro, and she's being massively underpaid that we had a conversation just a couple weeks ago. And she didn't even know, she didn't know she was probably $60,000-$70,000 below market. And I'm like, this is awful. I'm sure maybe some people get frustrated with me because I'm very honest. I mean, they're like, hey, you're a little bit above market, so keep that in mind as you're being selective about opportunities, or you're massively below market and either we can help you or let's get you resources so you can find that next role. And so we track quite a bit of comp data in the different markets that we work in. And so I as far as I don't remember the full question. Hopefully I'm answering it effectively, but as far as those career conversations, we're always trying to understand their career, the context, because in-house is are really interesting. It's not lockstep. It's not like a law firm where it's like, hey, first year's associates are at this, the Cravath scale, or like all the different law firms. So it's a little bit more of the Wild Wild West, and there's a lot of different factors on revenue level, sophistication of company, and things like that. And so we take all that data and then we give them kind of anecdotal kind of evidence that we have in the market of where you should be. And so it's really through that career conversation from our perspective and trying to help. I think one of the most fun scenarios that I had, one of my best clients, her name's Catherine. She was never a client of ours. We just met each other, and she was going through an interview process where she was negotiating an offer with the client. And she's like, hey, Zach, she just came to me. She's like, hey, what do you think about this offer? And I walked her through that process of how to negotiate, gave her data that wasn't necessarily our data, but market data that we have access to. And she was able to advocate for herself. And then she actually came back and worked with us. And so I've had scenarios where, and I always tell people, like, if you're negotiating an offer and you want to come share the details with me, you don't have to share a client or anything like that. Give me the general idea and I can give you a benchmark of if that's market or you should ask for more or if it's a fair offer, and talk them through. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Absolutely. That was a great resource for those of us in-house out there.
If I might jump in and say something, the other thing in terms of like within a law firm, I would say, staffing your teams with clients, because you have different rates that they're going to be billed to or billed out at. What they're going to bring in, that's going to affect their pay scale and their level of success in terms of being raised. It's an elevating. So it's good to look at those numbers because managers looking at numbers, and if you're putting somebody and you're staffing them on a team that has a lower revenue or profitability, that's going to affect those associates, those counsel, those people coming up for partner. And so you're going to want to, it's important to take a look and see, am I treating that person fairly in compensation wise, because those numbers are going to affect where their pay scale is. Likewise, looking at this, it was kind of eyes open one day. We were working, I'm blessed with many wonderful clients, and many that are very much into culture and inclusion. And at the same time, they're into keeping the budget very, very tight. And so they want a diverse team. That team's getting super squeezed on what we're able to bring in, the revenue and profitability, which is squeezing the group and can be a cause in helping that group to rise. And so all of these things play together. And I know that we're all answering to different things, but little tweaks can take away that sort of bias there, can take away that sort of negative data effect that creates a ceiling in terms of elevating, getting a better pay scale, things like that. And I will say that one of the clients I had the pleasure of reaching out, and I brought this up, and they said, well, we can't have that. And so up went our pay scale immediately. And so again, it was putting the money where the mouth is, and making sure that they were happy with the service and the team that they were getting, and they're also helping out that team to rise.
This is a kind of a general question. Anyone feel free to answer this from your perspectives, and maybe all of you share a little bit, but what advice would you give to leaders who want sustainable inclusion, but they don't have control over the systems or processes to change that? I know continue to reach out, but there are, maybe even mid-level managers that don't have the ability to really influence a budget for a candidate, for example, or a promotional budget. So how do people that don't have that senior level leadership or ownership over process or controls really make a difference to have sustainable inclusion as we talk about systems and hiring and advancement in organizations?
For me, what I was going to say is, retention is a big deal in tech, because there's opportunities everywhere. And it's just so much cheaper to retain someone than to try to hire someone. To retain a, a good person than to hire someone that who can replace that person. So I think part of the argument is not only like what is very good about this person, but what are the negative impacts if you lose this person? Because that also needs to be factored in. There's a lot of disruption that comes with that.
Yeah, absolutely. As a professor, I've been unionized for 9 years. So I appreciate organizing, right? Like one individual mid-level manager who feels bad and trying to agitate for control, you know, can be shut down. 10, you start to like get the ball rolling, especially if you frame it in terms of unobjectionable first principles, right? Equal pay for equal work. Make room in the budget for it, right?
Yeah, again, I'm hammering this point home, but in tech, the level of competence matters so much, and the creativity and the innovation and the different perspectives. It matters so much in a fast changing and dynamic environment as it is in tech, that the cost of losing good people, you keep doing that, you're not going to be competitive. And there's a synergistic cost to that too. That's where 2 + 2, you lose two here, you lose two here, you don't lose four, you're losing five, six, really. So in terms of their what negative impact it has.
Monica, I think we are close to being at a time for Q&A. I think you're going to keep an eye on the chat. Are there any
There was
questions?
one question about the panelists and whether they have daughters. That the question was that studies indicate that men with daughters tend to be more empathetic, inclusive, and most likely to be allies. I know Andrew has 2 boys.
I have a boy and then a little girl on the way. Stella Joy will be here in about 2.5 months. So we're very excited for that.
Congrats.
Yeah, I'm blessed with a boy and girl, and yeah, my daughter she owns me from the day she was born. So today, anybody who knows me, I answer to her. It's a great relationship.
So I have 5 children, all adult children, and so I have 2 boys, 2 girls, and one non-binary. And one of my girls is a controller in the construction industry. So there's a lot of stories there about how she has to be just as tough as the construction workers in order to move things along.
That
I
provides
imagine.
great insights. Yeah, it is so helpful. I mean, whether we have daughters or not, it is this opportunity to see people as people. The quote that was made famous by Ted Lasso, "Be curious, not judgmental." And it is hard for us to remember sometimes because we're all so busy and living in this frenetic world that prioritizes productivity over well-being. And we see in the results, all the Gallup workplace surveys show that people are suffering. And it's not just burnout, it's also loneliness. And it's these epidemic of dissatisfaction and well-being and engagement that's costing companies real dollars. These are not soft skills. These are productivity skills. These are essential skills to be able to show up as a leader and to just see people and to stop the judgment. I'll, go back to Albert's first point about someone calling a woman a name that's really full of bias. And so he switched it around and used facts. And it is this opportunity to help people pause. One practice is the 5 whys, and maybe some of you have heard about this. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? And there are a lot of ways you just like you're got to go a little deeper sometimes to question like what is it we know? And as lawyers, you're all so good at this reasoning, right? So maybe we're confronted with something. Scientists too. So many members in the CHIPS community are scientists, engineers, and there's this process of really understanding something so that we can show up fully. And these are what someone might call the soft skills. These are the essential skills of workplace, right? It's not how many facts you know, because we can get that from AI. It's how do you show up as a leader? Let's see, are there any? I haven't seen any other questions. A lot of agreement, a lot of thanks and appreciation. Yes.
Monica, there was a question from Christy asking if she was curious if there were experiences from our panelists' earlier years that helped shape perspective or any advice for bringing up the next generation of male allies.
Thank you. Thanks, Olivia.
Yeah, as I said in the chat, like I never really fit in, right? As like a minority immigrant. And so I always had a special empathy for people who didn't fit in. I was on another panel with like a really successful general counsel, a female, and then she said that, hey, whenever I go into a room, I instinctively count the number of women in the room. And I said, funny, I do the same thing with minorities, right? And she's been a general counsel of this international company, a huge company for like 10 years, but she just can't shut it off. And so that, you need to be an ally, right? You were there once. You need to help pull people up too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's important. I mean, a similar experience. I mean, I've had amazing people that I've worked with, and even currently, Katie Basile's one of the partners I worked with closely for the last 15 years, and she's been a mentor and ally, and really helped me grow. And before her, I had other female, bosses and people that I've worked with, but as a minority male, it was a natural connection, and it was part of the culture and part of the community that she built that, I think it resonated with me, kept me around. And it is, I think, helping us to grow and to succeed within our industry.
I think to raise more allies is simply talking about allyship. That's why this organization and this forum is such a good forum for that, and for companies to have a allyship organization or forum, so that those who are not familiar with allyship become conscious of allyship and the benefits of allyship. Because in the end, as a person, as an organization, we all win.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say definitely give men more opportunities to be allies. I think that's something that I think you'd be very, very surprised if you reach out for that coffee to network, ask them about their careers, especially gentlemen that are in chief legal officer, general counsel roles. Like, be bold about asking and connecting with them on LinkedIn. And you only need one or two to really be an advocate. And I think you'll be surprised. Like, maybe 10 say no, two say yes. And I think it's actually different percentages like that. But give men an opportunity to help you, advocate for you, because there's so many legal leaders in my network, not just men, but females as well, that they take a lot of pride in helping their team develop and bringing their names up in conversations. There's actually a gentleman in Kansas City that we just placed a second person on his team, and his kind of claim to fame, and I think one of the special things about him as a leader, is he's developed 5 general counsels from his team, where he takes pride in helping these younger attorneys develop and grow, and then they go on to be general counsels, and he advocates for them. And the most recent is a female that I know really well, Carly. And so finding those individuals, they're out there, I promise. Sometimes it just takes that step of making that connection as well.
I want to thank Maren for this outstanding conversation and bringing all of the key points together. Just give a round of applause to Maren. And a call out. This is the allyship session that we do with ChIPs, which is an organization to advance women in tech law and policy. And it is up to the women to be allies every much as the men. This is not like a just the men need to support the women, et cetera. This is a people need to support people, and we need to be able to step into a room not as a competitor, to really just put aside that competitiveness that you fostered and cultivated in law school and shift over to this. I know Albert's smiling, right? It's true that we've seen this in all of the health studies, what happens when someone like a benchmark of where they are before law school and after law school, and well-being plummets because of this increase in competition over everything, right? When you show up in the workplace, then you're supposed to lead teams and get along. And have you ever been cultivating those skills? And so everyone, all five of these fantastic people have shared great ideas to do that and to cultivate opportunities to advance another and to see each other as allies, as friends, as sponsors, as mentors. Marin, as I mentioned, is part of the ChIPs General Counsel Bootcamp Cohort 4. And what I love about this cohort is these women create bonds that are just incredible to watch. And they're all getting promotions and they're learning new skills and they're learning how to speak up for themselves and advance in their careers. And they're bringing everyone else with them. So what happens when your friend gets the job that you wanted? Now you have someone else who's ready to advocate for you. That's what happens, right? And they're a perfect position for each person, and we can support each other in that journey. So I put in the chat a call to action for everyone who's on this webinar, which is to share something positive about someone within the next week. I have a typo there. Find an opportunity to advance someone or to make an introduction. Maybe you know someone who could use a little help. Reach out and say, how can I help you? What would make the most difference for you today? Or mention their name. Talk about the great work they're doing so that it's not quite so invisible.
And thank you by the way for providing this form. I even wrote down some notes I learned in this form. It's great for cross fertilization of ideas.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much. Again, you'll receive a link to the CLE form feedback and resources. If you'd like California CLE or a certificate for any other purpose, please fill it out. And thank you all so much to the incredible panelists, Marin, Jason, Albert, Zach, Andrew. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a
Thank
great
you,
weekend.
guys.